What's up, everybody? This is my second week doing these long form vlog week recaps, and what it is actually just me throughout the week collecting the ideas or notes or images that most resonate with me throughout the week at any point in time where I encounter that particular piece of content, and me saving them, and then once a week just kind of collecting them all in this canvas. It's a Sublime canvas, and then for me to just recap what those were, see if there were any sort of categories or like common buckets of ideas that I'm thinking about or gravitating towards. And so this is kind of the wrapper or the packaging around that effort throughout the week. To just sum it up, mostly for me to see kind of where I'm at. It's mostly in the like the intellectual domain for me to explore and dig deeper into these ideas as I explain them. Hopefully through these videos, it makes it easier for me to cement these ideas in my psyche or my subconscious. So these titles here are more or less the buckets um, that I gravitated towards. One being the theory of constraints and advertising. I would say these are the two things that I thought most about the past week. And there are just like a note or two about play, art, and just miscellaneous. This could be honestly from everywhere. So, for example, where I get this inspiration, this was a tweet, this was a podcast episode. These in black are notes in my like daily journal that I kind of screenshotted here as I was like recapping my day. These are the common topics that I write about, or even this is a picture of a book that I was reading where I immediately got the inspiration, just took a picture of it and then put it here. Anywho, just from all over, really. Um, so, number one, the theory of constraints. I don't know who came up with this idea or where it really originates from, but at least I know that there's this one book called The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt and apparently also Jeff Cox that talks about it. I think it's a pretty famous and notorious book, at least in the business world, or in the productivity world. But it basically, the goal is just this fiction story of a guy or a scientist that or an engineer that goes to a factory and then kind of is tasked to, or is a worker at a factory that's tasked to optimize for output, struggles to find how to do that, and then he encounters this other dude who I think is the scientist or the physicist, and they have a conversation, and the entire kind of book is outlining um, what the theory of constraints is. Um, I particularly didn't enjoy this book so much, but honestly, like a synthesis or a recap of this book in YouTube or any video or text that summarizes, I think is highly valuable. Theory of constraints, also known as bottlenecks, are essentially so just stepping back, if you look at everything as being a system, so a system that has like inputs, there's a process in the middle, and outputs. So for example, a factory is a great example. You have inputs, which are the time and raw materials that go into producing an object. Then the system is the entire line, the factory line, and machinery that makes those happen. And then the output are the amounts of products that this entire process must plus input yield. The bottleneck or the constraint, or also known as the limiting factor, is that part of the system that which, if solved, generates like speeds up the entire process. And the thing about the bottleneck or the constraint is that at all times there is only one. And so that allows anybody that's operating in this mindset to tackle that bottleneck or that constraint, because it frees up more, probably more time, and more, it generates more output by just tackling that one thing. It's the thing that limits the flow, so it's the weakest link in the chain that determines the strength of the whole. So in your business, it could be, so say in an e-commerce business, is it could be either more, so the system being the funnel, where there's like views, product page hits, landing page hits, a conversion rate, so like amount of purchases. That's an entire flow. So at any point in that, call it the systemic, the bottleneck could be either I need more top of funnel, or the business needs more people just going into that flow, or there could be a massive drop off from the product page to the buy button. So it's just like an efficiency bottleneck. And really, any bottleneck, um, there's only two types of bottlenecks. There's volume bottlenecks and efficiency bottlenecks. So I either need more of something, more reps, more volumes, more pieces of content, or efficiency, just making the throughput from one stage of the funnel to the other stage of the funnel more conversion rate optimized. I hope that kind of makes sense. So either do something more or do something better at any point are is the solution to any bottleneck, and any system has only one bottleneck present. So that allows for a lot of like focus, because if we're defining the bottleneck as the thing that's preventing your output or limiting your output, then it's, if the bottleneck is identified, which is part of the problem at times where it's hard to determine what it is, or it could be really obvious, then once that's known, then the best ROI on your time is just tackling that bottleneck. Um, and there's this podcast episode that I also saved, where it's a Stripe co-founder, and then this, I know his name is Dwarkesh. I know he has a podcast, but I don't really know the background of this person. They're interviewing Elon, and the question is like, how in the world do you get so many things done?
How do you think about why your companies are able to move fast?
Yeah, I'm constantly addressing the limiting factor. So, on the deadlines front, I generally actually try to.
That's he's basically the go-to answer was I just attack the bottleneck, and then he talks about deadlines and how he sets them way more ambitious, because he's saying that the amount of time that it takes to execute on a task is generally the amount of time that that task is allocated to have. Um, but that's kind of another concept. I think it's called, it has something law, Parkinson's law, I think. Um, where work expands to fill the time available for its completion. So, anywho, he just combines a couple concepts here. But yeah, theory of constraints has been really taking over my mind in this past week, and I even wrote about it here. It is what productivity actually is if you're attacking the bottleneck. Anything other than that is just productive procrastination, really. And then I kind of go through this four-step framework that I really like about like how to improve at something, which is you do the thing, you share the thing, then off of sharing the thing, you measure the thing, and then you iterate, or you learn and then you iterate. So you're trying to get more views, you create the piece of content, you share it, you see how much engagement it has, and then kind of you learn, oh shit, maybe this hook didn't work, or it's another angle, and then kind of you iterate, and then you do again. Yeah, that is really like how learning happens. But I don't know how that fits into I guess it's in the same productivity category. But yeah, I applied this bottleneck or theory of constraints framework to my golf swing. And as I was improving it last week, and I realized that I wasn't improving my swing for so long because I wasn't really attacking the bottleneck, and I didn't know what the bottleneck was until I actually filmed myself. And then through an app, I was able to identify what the bottleneck was, and then it just kind of became clear to me what I needed to work on. So it's through this doing and measuring what you're doing that you're able to identify the bottleneck. Because if you don't do this four step framework, then there's no way you're improving because you don't know where the bottleneck is. So I guess this is even prior to identifying the bottleneck. You first have to like do and share. Share in the case of the golf swing is just like record myself and go and feed it into the app for then the app to tell me, hey, I measured your swing. This is what's wrong. This is what you should do, right? Anywho, I think this is really important in the context of business and getting things done. On another front, advertising. There is, I don't even think it's here, or I thought I had it here. But one of the things that caught my mind on advertising was, I think, one of the principles of David Ogilvy, which is a master advertiser, that said like advertising is not evil if the thing you're advertising isn't evil. So for some reason, I always had this kind of tug with advertising where I didn't know, like it felt uncomfortable for me to share stuff because I was like capturing attention from other people, and that felt wrong. But if the thing you're funneling that attention to is something you think would improve the world or improve somebody's lives, then why not? So that's one idea that stuck with me, which is not here. But another quote that I don't even know where I heard it was, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and advertise. I really like that. And this is just a note from my journal, which is like where the state of my business is at, which is like I just need to pound the attention game. So just connecting it back to bottlenecks. My bottleneck right now is like volume and impressions and just traffic to my site that ultimately leads to the purchase of the product and the downloading of the app. So it's just like volume, which is the name of the game for sales and marketing. If the thing you're selling, it's not evil if the thing you're selling is not evil. And then I really like this take from this VC crypto poker player guy called Hasib Qureshi. I think that's how you pronounce his name, where it's like an influencer is basically somebody that garners that is known to garner a lot of attention. And I like how he categorized different sorts of influencers and then ranked them, where like the worst reason to be known as an influencer is just out of a meme, then it's lifestyle, then looks, content, talent, and ideas. And I really like how he framed it. I don't know why that caught my attention. I resonated with that. So yeah, a lot of thought and brain cycles on advertising this past week for sure. On another front, I was listening to a podcast, David Senra's Founders podcast, about Phil Knight. And this is a part where I really resonated, where what Phil Knight, I think, was questioning, like, why this entrepreneurship stuff? Why am I kind of going through all this hustle and pain and drive to do what I'm doing? And he finally, it happened. I saw it all before me, exactly what I wanted my life to be: play. And that's the word. The secret of happiness, the essence of beauty or truth, or all we ever need to know, lay somewhere in that moment when the ball is in mid-air, when both boxers sense the approach of the bell, when the runners near the finish line and the crowd rises as one. There's an exuberant clarity in that pulsing half second before winning and losing. And so he wanted that to be his life. I asked myself, what if there was a way without being an athlete to feel what athletes feel, because he was a runner, to play all the time instead of working? And I think that resonated. Like, that's what ultimately anybody, an entrepreneur, or actually anybody else is really trying to chase just that feeling of play. Imagine if you're playing throughout your entire life instead of working. I know that sounds very like idealistic, but it resonated with me as Phil Knight was describing it, or as Senra was describing Phil Knight describing it in his book The Shoe Dog or Shoe Dog. And there another category, art, just a few definitions or a few of what things that caught my attention of what art is. Design is a solution to a problem. Art is a question to a problem. I really like that. Art is a question to a problem. So art's not trying to solve anything. It's just trying to like pose a thought or pose a dichotomy. Let me see what's related to this thought because I really like it. Great art makes you wonder. Great design makes things clear to say. Art is having something to say. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Art is more so. I like this framing of art where it's like we're not trying to answer anything here, but more so we're actually trying to question more and more things. And the artist hopes that by exposing their art, they they allude to these questions that they themselves are trying to ponder. And then I really like Picasso's reply. I think this is true. I don't know. I pulled it out of this trustable, respectable like writer on X and on Substack. And Picasso's reply when asked for his thought on computers 60 years ago, they are useless. They can only give you answers. So an artist himself is saying like computers give you answers, they don't pose questions. I think that's where art fits in. I think it's just stands at a different domain. Although there's for sure a lot of intersection between art and technology. But anywho, these thoughts on art were cool. And then just miscellaneous stuff that I don't even know how to thread the needle between all of these. I really like this quote: connected to everything, attached to nothing. Merge fields, nature is the only industry. I think this is Hormozy saying, related to business, that you really have to withstand the pain of feedback, the boredom of repetition, the shame of rejection, which I found to be very true. I also, this is an entry for me, just started mood boarding a lot. I have like a Figma thing going on where I kind of try to visualize, or in my words, I feel like this is a very grounded practice of visualization, but with real images and feelings. I love curating a set of images that resonate with me. So yeah, I've been doing that. And then lastly, this is from a podcast that I was hearing about like the state of the world right now and how it feels, and how for sure the pace of the world and the rate of change of the world is very unique to to the history of the world, especially as we're now like super online and super interconnected, and just like information and news and markets move at a speed like never before, especially with AI, but it also like especially with the internet. So it just feels like very accelerated and different times. I think there's a pre and a post COVID in terms of like this sense or this feeling that that Naval, which is the podcast that I was listening to, was trying to describe. Then he referenced a Chinese phrase that I think is a Chinese curse that said "May you live in interesting times," because yeah, it alludes to the fact that when things are interesting or this fast or this quick, it's like anything can happen. So it's just adding a lot of variance to the possibilities of the world, whereas before you just kind of, it was boring and you knew what would happen day in and day out. So that's, I guess, why it's a curse to live in interesting times. And that's kind of my weekend review. Under 20 minutes, cool stuff. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you have anything to say. Peace out.